All right, boys and girls, let's read the first problem. Wonder why that is. Okay, it says Lila collected the honey from 4 of her beehives. From the first hive, she collected 1/3 gallon of honey. From the second hive, she collected 3/4 gallons of honey. Then I want you to put a star by this next sentence. The last 2 hives yielded 1/4 gallon each. That's a trick. We're trying to trick you, okay? So Mia, did you do that? Did you put the star by it? Okay, good. Now what we're going to do, boys and girls, is we're going to make one tape diagram for each hive. So how many hives were there? And you don't need them very big. So just make 4. And they have to go across the top. So if you think you're going down with them, please erase it and make them go across the top. Okay? Otherwise, you might run out of room to do your problem. Okay. Very good. You need a better eraser? Nope, he's got one. Okay. And each one of these hives, we're going to write 1 gallon above. But you could do 1 GAL if you want. Okay. So we got that much done? All right. So from the first hive, what did she collect?
1/3.
1/3. So what will I divide my tape diagram into? 3 equal parts. And I'm going to shade 1/3. So that's hive number 1. Okay. The second hive, what did she collect? 3/4. So I'm going to shade 3/4 for the second hive. Now here's where the trick is. The last 2 hives yielded 1/4 gallon each. So both of them are 1/4. They're trying to get you to mess up there. So divide it into 4 equal pieces and label below 1/4.
Mrs. Our shading like from high.
So now I'm ready to figure out how much she had in all. In all tells me I'm going to do what? Add them up, okay? Now, is there anything I can add before I draw the fractional area models? Okay, I can add all of these together, can't I? Whoops. So I'm just going to bracket them. And what would that be? 5/4. So write down 5/4. Don't look at each other's faces right now. Just look at my face or my board or your paper. Those are your 3 choices. Okay, so what is my problem going to be now? I'm going to have this first hive plus what?
1 and 1/4.
I could do 1 and 1/4. But I'm going to go ahead and do 5/4 for now, okay? And you'll see why in a minute. So when I solve a problem like this is a test, so I'm going to ask you to show me what have we been using to solve these types of problems. What have we been using? We sometimes call them area models, but we can also call them fractional models. Okay, So why do you think I drew 3 instead of just 2 for my 2 fractions?
So
Alondra, look over here. Cooper, go back and sit by Jesus. Now your name's on my recording. Okay, so tell me why, Corbin.
because you have to shade one of them 1/3, and then the other two 1 and 1/4.
5/4, right? So I'm going to move those over just a little bit. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to show 1/3, and I'm going to shade 1/3. And we've done this more times than we want to count, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one, I need 2, because 5/4 is more than 1 whole, isn't it? What's the denominator on the second fraction? Tell me, what's the denominator? 4. So horizontal lines, you'll need 3 horizontal lines to give you 4 equal parts. And I'm going to shade 5/4. So that would be 1 whole, which would be 4/4, plus another 4. And I'm going to go ahead and write it down here. Whoops, that's kind of big. 5/4 equals. Okay, so common denominator, boys and girls. What's my common denominator for 3 and 4?
12.
12. So is this all coming back to you from the first few lessons? Okay, so I'm going to add those 2 together. So when I add the fractions, what do I do with my lines? I move them over, I switch them around. So my thirds will be divided into fourths, and my fourths will be divided into thirds. Now I do that so I can get a numerator. Since I've made my denominator larger, I'm going to have to make my numerator larger also. Remember what I said, whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So how many are shaded here, Mia?
5.
4. You're going to have to count correctly. Okay. Now on the next one, how many are shaded? I could count 3, 6, 9, 12, what? Count with me. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So that's 15 twelfths. And this was 4 twelfths. So if I add 4 plus 15, 19 twelfths. Now that's my answer, but I'm not quite finished. Jesus, tell me why I'm not quite finished. No? Ella? The 19's bigger than the 12, so I've got to turn this into a whole number plus a fraction. Remember that? A mixed number. So 1 whole would be what?
1 and 7.
No, I want to know what 1 whole is. I asked a question. What is it? 12 twelfths plus 7 twelfths equals, Corbin?
1 and 7 12.
Okay, that's my answer. Right? Now tomorrow on your test, this is one thing I will let you come to me for. I'm going to check that answer because the next problem depends on that answer. Okay? That's the only time I'll let you come to me tomorrow for the test. A sentence to answer this would be, Lila, collected? What do you think? Help me out here. Collected 1 and 7 twelfths gallons of honey in all. Okay, or whatever you want to do. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm really not satisfied with your sentences in 5th grade. Somebody on the last test put every sentence without a capital letter and a period. I'm not going to mention any names, but it was someone in this class. Okay. All right, so don't do that anymore. You're fifth graders now. I think my fifth grade teacher would have, I don't know, she might have fainted if any of us did that. Not only did we have to make sure that was there, we had to write in cursive for everything. I know. Okay, let's go down to the next one. So remember I said we're going to use this answer on the next problem? Okay, so remember what that answer is. I'm going to go ahead and read this one. After using some of the honey she collected for baking, Lila found that she had only 3/4 gallon of honey left. How much honey did she use for baking? Support your answer with a diagram, numbers, and words. We'll start with a tape diagram. Whoops, that's not a tape diagram. Now, how much honey did she collect? That's what we need to know. 1 7/12. So that's the total amount to work with, okay? She's going to do a lot of baking. And so this whole thing, what do you think it's going to be about? Even the back. Baking, okay? So she used some of it. And she had 3/4 gallon left. How much money did she use for baking? So that's how I'm organizing my information. What do you think? Is that pretty good? Okay. So now, how do I solve a problem like this? I do. I'm going to subtract. So 1 7/12 minus 3/4 would tell me how much she used. Now this is pretty complicated because if I multiply those two denominators, that's going to be a huge denominator, isn't it? But we're going to go ahead and do it because that's what we're practicing. And tomorrow on the test, you won't have a huge denominator, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is make sure your fractional area models are pretty big. So like as big as you can get them. Pause. Okay, so with your colored pencil, go ahead and shade 1 whole and 7/12. So this will be 1 whole. And when I'm done shading, I'd like you to be done shading, please. And we're not going to sharpen colored pencils, just pick one that's sharp. And then 7. Is a little past half, isn't it? Okay. Now with your pencil, you're going to bracket 1 7/12 and label it at the bottom. This is a review of lesson 6. Remember it? It's probably the last time I was actually here teaching you something. Okay, I'm going to put my thought bubble over here because I need this room at the top to write my problem. So thought bubble here. Help me remember what goes in the thought bubble, Katie.
3/4.
3/4. Whatever I'm subtracting. And this is the one that I'm going to divide using horizontal lines. Try that again. So, and how many will I shade? 3. Now remember, this is just a visual. It's what we're thinking in our minds, because we're going to use that when we subtract, okay? All right, so dividing these in fourths. And I'm going to bracket how many of them? 3. 3 rows. Okay. So now the numbers are going to get pretty large, but they go small quickly. Okay. So tell me what 12 times 4 is here. 48. So my common denominator is 48. Cooper has a better way to do it that we will talk about in a day or two. Or maybe when I'm not recording. Okay. So now I've got to figure out, okay, if this is 48 48ths, and this is 7, 14, 21, 28 48ths, what's my numerator for the first fraction? 28 plus 48. Can you do that in your head? 76. So 76. Now, boys and girls, keep in mind, tomorrow on the test, your denominator is going to be much smaller. Okay? This is just a practice. Okay, and then if I subtract 3/4 of one of the shapes, not interested in making that many X's, are you? How many boxes are in that section right there? 12, 24, 36. Okay, so 76 minus 36. Aubrey, what's 76 minus 36? 7 minus 3 is? Okay, so am I finished? No. I've got to simplify. The thing is, I don't want to divide by 2 because I already know I would have to do it 4 times. So let's come up with a bigger number.
4.
Get bigger than 4.
10.
Not that big.
5. 6. 8. 7.
8! Who said 8? Now, if we did greatest common factor on the T-charts, what would we have figured out? That it was 8. But I don't want to take time for that right now. But we would have figured out it was 8. So 40 divided by 8 is 48. Divided by 8 is... So Lila used 5/6 gallon of honey. All right. Now, who remembers what I said the back of the test was like? The review and the test are the same. So you have the power to get this right if you decide to study. Here's what I know. This is going to be too hard. There will be very few 100%, but that's okay because I'm not even positive I'm going to record this in my grade book, okay? What my goal is for you to learn from your mistakes so that that gets us ready for the last half of the unit. By the way. Okay, let's take a look at 3. With the remaining 3/4 gallon of honey, now if I look back on the second problem, it says she had 3/4 gallon of honey left. So that came from problem 2. Okay? Lila decided to bake some loaves of bread and several batches of cookies for her school bake sale. So go ahead and get my tape diagram on there so I can write on it while I'm reading. So how much did she have left?
3/4.
Good. All right, now I'm going to keep going. It says the bread needed 1/6 gallon of honey. And the cookies needed 1/4 gallon of honey. How much honey was left? Left over. Support your answer using a diagram, numbers, and words. Okay, now this is a two-step problem. I'm going to have to do two operations. So how do I figure out the missing part? First, how do I figure out what's missing? If I have the bottom of a number box, subtract, right? Okay. So before I can subtract though, what do I have to do? Add. So the first problem, now I'm going to go ahead and put 3/4 minus, and then we'll figure out what to subtract when we're done adding. Okay? So 3/4 minus 1/6 plus 1/4. And yes, you're going to use area models. And this is simple. You don't need great big ones for this. I'm going to show 1/6 here and 1/4 here. And what kind of fraction has 1 on top? What do we call those? Just a 1, no? Improper is where the larger number's on top. Unit, unit. Unit fractions, very good. Okay, so did you set, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Did you set it up like this?
Yes.
Okay, so my common denominator is what, boys and girls? How'd you get 24?
6 times 4.
6 times 4. Now, in order to get the numerators, what do I need to do with my lines? Switch them over. Divide my sixths into fourths, and my fourths into sixths, and then do some counting. So Mia, how many for the top of the first fraction? 4. And how many for the second numerator?
6.
And what is 4 plus 6? 10 24ths. Am I finished?
No.
What do I have to do? Simplify. And you say 2? Okay, so what's 10 divided by 2? And what's 24 divided by 2? Okay, what will my sentence? Oh, I'm not done. This is a two-step problem. Take that circle off, Mrs. Lewis. I've got to subtract over here. Now, see why it was a good idea to write that 3/4 down so I wouldn't forget to do it? Okay, now on this one, Cooper, I'm going to let you share your strategy. I'm going to let you share your strategy for finding the common denominator because I don't want to take the time. So,
We did it.
okay, so why couldn't I just make 12 be my common denominator? Is there any reason why I can't? This is what I haven't taught you yet. So what did I do to the 4, Mia, to make it a 12? Times what? So if I do the same thing over here to the 3, what's 3 times 3?
9.
And then this just stays the same. And you'll learn how to do this in the second half of the unit. So we've got what for an answer? But I'm not done. What strategy? 1, 2, 3, or 4 should I use?
2.
Nope.
4.
Nope.
3. 3.
Why is it 3?
So you can see if you can get that.
Why is the strategy 3? Divide by the numerator. Why is it?
Because 4 goes into 12.
Because 4 goes into 12. So it's strategy number 3 from our list of simplifying fractions. What's my answer?
1/3.
Okay, so my question was how much honey was left over. Lila had 1/3 gallon of honey left over. Whoops, I forgot my R. Okay. So one more problem and we've got 10 minutes to do it. Your eyes should be either on your paper, on me, or on this board. Okay, this one is pretty confusing. It's actually confusing for me when I teach it to you. So I'll try not to mess up. Lila decided to make more baked goods for the bake sale. And this is talking about flour, not honey, okay? So this is a separate problem. She used 1/8 pound less flour to make bread than to make cookies. This is a riddle. She used 1/4 pound more flour to make cookies than to make brownies. If she used 1/2 pound of flour to make the bread, how much flour did she use to make the brownies? Purple?
Aliens don't wear hats. Wait,
Right.
what?
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to organize our information. So let's start with bread, and give yourself a lot of room. Cookies and brownies. And we will make a tape diagram for each, but we have to do them one at a time.
Oh, give ourselves some room.
Yeah, give yourself some room between. Okay, so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to figure out which one of these we already know.
We know bread.
How do we know bread? Read me the sentence.
1/2 pound.
No?
If she used 1/2 pound.
Yeah, read that out loud to us.
Flour. If she used 1/2 pound of flour to make bread. how
Stop.
much
Okay, so do we know how much she used for bread?
Yes.
1/2 pound. Now this is where you got to be very careful. All your tape diagrams are going to come back to look at this 1/2 pound. So it's got to be straight. It's got to be lined up with bread. And we know this is 1/2 pound of flour. Okay, now it says she used 1/8 pound less flour to make bread than to make cookies. So was cookies more or less than bread? Less. So when you make cookies, I want you to make it a little bit shorter than the bread. And see how I lined them up? Try and line up the beginning. I know it's hard. And then, how much less did she use? 1/8. Right? So the cookies were 1/2 minus 1/8.
So you do 1/2 times 4, which gives you 4/8. So 3/8.
Oh my gosh.
Golly.
I did it backwards.
So,
It's okay.
was I right? Please say no. Please say no.
You have to line up the end of your tape diagrams. and then add on an eighth after that.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's alright.
So the cookies used a half plus an eighth. Okay. Now for brownies, it's switching over to 1/4. So cookies were more than brownies by 1/4. So what I want to do now is I want to, and this is dotted, line up the end of cookies and brownies. And we're going to subtract 1/4, so I'm going to do this. And I haven't even made my tape diagram yet, have I? So now I'm going to put that on, and my tape diagram is going to go to the end of this bracket, to the best of my ability.
Wait, does it have to line up?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's how much is for brownies, but we don't know it. What do we know?
That 1/8 is
Half of that. What else do we know?
that 1/2 minus
1/4 minus 1/8 would be, I've got to figure out this.
3/8.
No? This, how many eighths would make,
7/8?
no, it's not one whole, it's 1/4.
No.
You don't know?
No, it's 1/8. Yeah. Look.
Good. If we were better with our little fractional models, we could figure that out, but. Okay, so now that I have that much, I'm ready to do a problem. What's my problem going to be? Well, brownies are less than everything, so I know it's going to be subtraction. What do I know? I know that I used 1/2 pound of flour.
Well, that we know.
1/2 minus what?
We know.
My line's not correct, but it should be right there.
We know that
1/2 minus what, boys and girls?
1/8,
1/8.
which since it's 4.
Okay, so how do I do this problem? This is your last problem.
Fraction model.
Fraction model, because that's what our directions say. So fraction model, 1/2, 1/8, and I'm going to add or subtract. Am I going to add or subtract? Subtract, because the brownies are that used the least amount of flour. What's your common denominator based on the strategies we've been using?
16.
16. Okay, now my half becomes divided into eighths. And eighths divided in half. So if I drew this correctly, I've got 8/16 and 2/16. 6/16. Is that simplified?
Yes. No.
No, because they're both even. So what can I divide by since they're both even? Divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is?
3.
And 16 divided by 2 is?
8. 3/8.
Okay, what will my sentence be? Lila used 3/8 pound of flour to make what?
To make
To make brownies.